A one and a two and a one, two, three, four. You love her voice, you love her looks. What Melissa loves are comic books. Hi, welcome back, everybody. We're still talking about old comic books from before the golden age of comic books, though we're getting really close. We are still in 1937, and we're doing the first of two spotlight episodes about Detective Comics, the big new launch of 1937. So, what are we talking about today? Which of the features from Detective Comics is it? Well, I talked way back in episode 16, 8 months ago, about the curious appearances of Siegel and Shuster stories in the Comics Magazine issues 1 and 2. In that episode, I largely focused on the Dr. Mystic story in issue 1. In issue 2, there was a new feature called Federal Agent. This looked and sounded a lot like the Federal Men feature they were making for National, except for the one-word difference in the title and the fact that the character, who is drawn just like Agent Steve Carson of Federal Men, was now called Agent Bart Regan. A few months later, Dr. Mystic turned back into Dr. Occult, the National character he most resembled, but something different happened with Bart Regan. Instead of Bart Regan turning back into Steve Carson, Bart Regan will turn up again at National, this time in a strip called Spy, in the first issue of Detective Comics. Bart's return is in a 4-page story, one of the shortest features in this issue. This story could easily be part of the same continuity as the Comics Magazine story, but in the first panel, Bart is discharged from the FBI. He is told to report to a secret spy detail. Now, it's not the CIA, because this is a whole 10 years before the CIA was formed. In 1937, the only agencies doing any spying that we know of were the FBI, already covered by the Federal Men feature, and the State Department. The State Department's spy agency, apparently known by the ominous codename the Black Chamber, was in real life drastically underfunded by the 1930s as the FBI rose in prominence. So in this feature, we are either seeing a reimagined Black Chamber as still well-funded and vigorous, or an entirely fictitious third government agency. Between panels, Bart voices displeasure at this move. He would prefer to stay with the FBI. Later, even though Bart's face never changes, we're told that a great sorrow stifles his heart. Now, it's not about losing his job. He's also been asked to give up his fiancée, Sally Norris. I don't know if this was ever a real thing, but that spies couldn't be married, but it gives Bart grist for internal conflict. He is conflicted about his job. He hates what he is asked to do to Sally. For a 1937 comic book story, this is remarkable character depth. This is the sort of thing that, if it was more than just brief mentions, a marvelous comic book company is going to make their signature thing in the 1960s. The scenario of this first mission is rather simple. Pretending to be an army captain, Bart is supposed to befriend a socialite suspected of charming state secrets out of young officers. Complicating the story is Sally, who isn't willing to gracefully step out of the story. She wants answers for why Bart jilted her, and she crashes the party Bart is at to confront him. At first, she is amused by his army disguise, but then she's livid when Bart goes home with the spy Olga. Distracted by Sally, Bart makes some mistakes and makes Olga suspicious. As our first installment ends on a cliffhanger, Olga is about to slip Bart a Mickey. I have talked before about how each of the Siegel-Shuster features was of a different genre. Henri Duval historical, Federal Men science fiction, Dr. Occult supernatural horror, and Calling All Cars, well, the adventures of Sandy Keene of the Cleveland Police Force, I have not spent a lot of time on, and we will have to come back to it again. But in its debut story, it seemed to be setting up a romantic comedy between Sandy and the commissioner's daughter, but that subplot didn't quite gel and was quickly dropped. This time, Siegel and Schuster seem to have ironed out all the details and get it right, because Sally trying to win Bart back is equally important in Spy to all of Bart's spy work. This continues in the second installment, where Olga's effort to drug Bart is foiled by him rushing outside to rescue Sally, but she's winning the fight with a taxi driver who tried to stop her from leaving without stiffing him. Bart takes Sally home, but not before taking a figurine from Olga's apartment on a weird hunch. Olga gets lectured by her boss about losing the figurine. Bart examines it in vain, but then the second issue's cliffhanger is when a jilted Sally tries to get back at Bart by marrying an old suitor. Now, you are probably anticipating that in issue 3, Sally says no on the altar or something cliche like that, but Siegel and Schuster, at the peak of their creative powers, the minister is actually one of the spies and abducts Sally from the wedding ceremony. They have figured out that Bart is a spy, but they haven't figured out who Bart is and want to torture that information out of Sally, who they have figured out who she is. In a weird story wrinkle that doesn't make a lot of sense, people start assuming that Bart uh, is behind Sally's kidnapping because he was the jealous ex. This even makes it into the newspaper, which means that Sally has been kidnapped for at least half a day, if not a full day already. Because the spies don't read the newspapers, they haven't used this to figure out Bart's identity yet. Instead, they capture Bart only when he tries to rescue Sally from Olga's apartment. As issue 3's installment ends, they are offered the ultimatum of surrendering the figurine in exchange for their lives. In issue 3, Bart and Sally are given 3 minutes to discuss 2 choices. It looks like this is curtains for both of them, if not for an Irish beat cop who just happens to be passing under the nearby open window at just this moment. Bart gets incredibly lucky, knocking the potted plant off the window without anyone noticing, but it happens to land right on Patrick O'Toole's head. We are treated to a big panel of Officer O'Toole's climbing the fire escape. A 4-panel page and a 4-page feature is valuable real estate for a big panel that doesn't even include our feature's hero in it. But at this time in the history of panel layouts, oversized panels seem to be used not for the most dramatic moments, but for the most significant plot points. And Officer O'Toole reaching the apartment is crucial to saving Bart from a fatal shot at the last possible second. This could be the moment when the spies are captured and the story ends, but Siegel is not done with plot twists. Olga quickly claims that she is Sally Norris, and her 2 fellow spies were actually just good Samaritans trying to save her from Bart. Unfortunately for Bart and Sally, Officer O'Toole isn't very smart. Sally was kidnapped from a wedding, and Sally is the one dressed in white. Olga is wearing red. But he lets the spies go and arrest Bart. But this is quickly sorted out by the police commissioner. At the start of the 5th issue's installment, Siegel slips and says Bart works for the Bureau. Either he's forgotten that he removed Bart from the Federal Bureau of Investigations, or he's imagined a fictional spy agency with Bureau in the title. By now, Bureau scientists have deciphered the code hidden on the surface of the figurine, and it provides information that sends Bart to New York in pursuit of the spy ring. But this is still very much a story about Bart and Sally. Sally, proving her resourcefulness, manages to tail Bart without him noticing and boards the same plane as him. On board, Bart finally breaks down and confesses that he's still in love with Sally, but he's a spy now, and his life isn't his own. He is really hoping that the passengers around him are deeply engrossed in that in-flight movie. And yes, I did check my facts on this before recording this joke. The first in-flight movie on an airplane happened in 1921. Sally is satisfied with this and agrees to return to Washington, D.C. and wait for Bart until she spots Olga at the airport. Again, Sally shows herself to be a masterful shadower, following the 3 spies to a hotel without them ever spotting her. Before she can enter the spy's room, Bart finds her and stops her. He knew to come here too because of the deciphered code. He also knows the spies are here to murder a diplomat in the same hotel, and he races to the diplomat's room just in time to save the diplomat's life. But then Sally has to save Bart, breaking a vase over her head from behind before Bart can get shot. Later, back in Washington, Sally is inducted into the spy business for her valor, and from this point on, they'll be partners. From this point on, it will also no longer be serialized, but every story is done in one. Granted, it's hard to imagine Sally passing the psychological exam to become a spy. She was, just days ago, ready to marry someone only to make Bart jealous. She's like a crazy ex-stalker, but it's not just her valor, but the very skill as a stalker that the Spy Bureau wants her for. Stepping back, let's compare Sally Norris to Siegel and Schuster's previous leading ladies. Henri Duval had a female companion of the king helping him in a few panels, but we never even learned her name, even though finding out what her name was how he got involved in the whole scenario. Calling All Cars had Police Commissioner's daughter Doris Bailey as a foil for Sandy Keene for all of 2 installments before she was dropped from the strip. Rose Psychic does not have a consistent presence in Dr. Occult's feature, but their relationship is significant to the story until the page Rose professes her love for Dr. Occult, and then she is summarily written out of the feature forever. But here in Spy, Siegel and Shuster seem to have learned an important lesson that continued romantic tension is good storytelling. This is a lesson they are going to carry over to a feature that they're going to debut next, which is, of course, Superman with Lois Lane. Now, the next issue is number 6, and Sally's debut as a spy right away shows her lack of experience in training and that she's supposed to distract someone while Bart searches his room, and she completely botches seducing this man. She resourcefully tries to flip the script and make a scene by accusing him of flirting with her, but this fails when a witness speaks up for the man. In the end, Sally still saves the day by showing up just as Bart is discovered. In issue 7, Sally follows a hunch, accuses a government contractor of destroying a Hindenburg-like blimp, and gets it right. But she also came unarmed to accuse him, and Bart has to save her. This story may seem dated to us, but this was ripped from the headline stuff in 1937. The Hindenburg disaster had just happened 3 months prior, and suggesting here that foul play was responsible, or may have been responsible behind it, when 35 people died, was a risky and potentially offensive move. Now, it must seem obvious by now that I am a fan of Spy, but more specifically, Sally Norris, who I consider to be their greatest pre-Superman creation. She's charming, funny, goofy, but also surprisingly good at spy work, sort of like a female Chuck. Whereas Bart is just another cookie-cutter macho male lead, honestly, if they had played up how emotional Bart was on the inside and how hard he worked to tamp that down so it never shows, he would be a lot more interesting too. Sadly, who wasn't a fan of Spy seemed to be the editors. Spy remained locked in a measly 4-page berth, one of the shortest in the anthology, for the entirety of 1937. Starting with issue 7, the issues began with an editorial page hawking the major features in that month's issue. Spy got at least name-dropped at the bottom of issue 7's page, but left off entirely in issue 8's page. And to be fair, the title was about as generic as you could get. Had it been a little longer, like instead of Spy, maybe Spy versus Spy, then that might have gotten a little more traction. Now I'm going to wrap up here for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed learning about Spy as much as I did rereading them. Reading along with me, though, is going to be tricky on this one, as DC Comics has never reprinted these stories outside of the first issue. Come on, DC, are you really all in without bringing at least Sally Norris back? Think about it. And enjoy and bye for now, everybody.